Good afternoon once again, friends of the media. Today, we are seeking your attention for matters which perhaps have their roots outside Ghana on the international stage, but nonetheless impacts everything we do in Ghana on a daily basis, except that maybe we choose not to acknowledge how important those matters are in our daily lives. At independence, Ghana's first Prime Minister and then President made two profound statements. Seek ye first the political kingdom, and all other things shall be added unto you. He then added that the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless the rest of the continent is also independent. At the time, it was agreed that the most important problem we faced was to gain political independence, and all our energies were directed at that. Just as the early African leaders were faced with and had to fight for our political independence, today's leaders are faced with having to fight for our economic independence to assure prosperity and dignity for our people. On Wednesday, our president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, made an address at the United Nations General Assembly. The audience was the world, and the president spoke from his heart. The background for all conversations in the past 18 months, international conversations as well as local, has been the COVID-19 pandemic. President Akufo-Addo spoke about the devastation that the pandemic has brought on our people. Yes, it is true, as our president pointed out, that the predictions that we in Africa were going to die in uncountable numbers and have bodies in the streets has not happened, and we are indeed grateful to the Almighty. But the devastation on our economies and pockets have been unprecedented, and in economic terms have been the equivalent of the bodies in the streets that were predicted. President Akufo-Addo also pointed out that so far, the only way out that scientists tell us is the vaccination of a substantial number of the population. He did not prevaricate. He did not try to suggest that the world owed Africa and us in Ghana any favors. He simply spoke directly and told the world powers the injustice and unfairness that they were forcing on us. They donate vaccines to us in Africa and then turn around and say that when we use these vaccines, which they have donated to us, we would be regarded as unvaccinated when we try to enter their countries. He called it by its proper name, an immigration measure, and he told them it was retrogressive. President Akufo-Addo pointed out that less than 4% of people on the African continent have been vaccinated. But the reality of the world we live in is that it was as much in the interest of the foreign powers as in our interest that we in Africa get vaccinated as well. Ladies and gentlemen, how does Africa recover in this current world economy when that economy is integrated and the cards are stacked against us? As we speak, anytime you buy a handkerchief off the street in Ghana, you are keeping somebody outside Ghana in a job. The handkerchief importer has to find foreign exchange to pay for the product and shipping of that product from abroad. Maybe the only real production benefit will be cotton, imported from Africa very, very cheaply. Perhaps apart from the indigenous foods we eat and some of the clothes we wear, most of the goods we consume are imported, which means less jobs, less incomes, and more expenditure. To restore some balance, President Akufo-Addo is asking the world for a new economic partnership with Africa. He is pointing out to the world that after over 70 years of operation, the current financial and decision-making architecture of the world is unable to cope with the new realities and needs of participating countries, especially Africa, including Ghana. He is therefore asking the world to be bold, to seize the movement of COVID-19 recovery to change the way the world relates to Africa economically. He is asking the world for not less than an African Marshall Plan. And for those of you who are familiar with the Marshall Plan of Europe, funded by America, that is what Europe used to rebuild itself after the Second World War. massive investments pumped in from America. President Akufo-Addo proposes 25% to 35% of the newly issued $650 billion worth of SDRs to be given to less endowed countries. That would be 160 billion to 230 billion, of which at least 100 billion ought to come to Africa. Currently, however, as things stand, Africa is receiving barely 33 billion for its 54 countries and 1.3 billion population. How is that sum to transform African countries for prosperity, security, and political stability? Friends of the media, when President Akufo-Addo speaks to the world, he speaks for you and about you. Economic weakness breeds insecurity and political instability, both of which are dear to Ghanaian hearts. An ability to produce and generate jobs and incomes supports security and stability. And that is what President Akufo-Addo is fighting for on the world stage. A reasonable share of the trillions in investments funds available at any moment in the world economy. More access to international resources for investments into the private sector, infrastructure, technology, environment, and the people. These are the matters that engage us on a daily basis. The bread and butter issues, or to be more precise, the Wache and Banku issues. So when President Akufo-Addo tells the world that no amount of charity and handouts can help Africa, he is talking about you. When President Akufo-Addo tells the world that Africa needs a seat at the G20, he is talking about you. When President Akufo-Addo tells the world that Africa also needs vaccines for 900 million people, he is talking about you. When President Akufo-Addo tells the world that 103 million jobs have been lost in Africa to the COVID-19 pandemic, he is talking about you. Indeed, when President Akufo-Addo tells the world that Africa deserves a better deal at the world table of trade, he is talking about you and your needs. Whatever the World Economic Governance System decides affects delivery of roads, health, and schooling in Ghana. It determines whether we will have a job and an income after school, whether we have internet access, whether we have access to housing and transport. It determines whether we can build families and care for them. Indeed, it determines what you eat on a daily basis. And I'm sure many of you remember the infamous incident of Ghana's preference for local poultry, which was executed in tariffs on imported chicken by the Parliament of Ghana. For those of you who recollect, Ghana's sovereign government was literally forced to withdraw the measure. And as we speak, we continue to consume more imported chicken, and the local poultry industry can barely compete. That is the kind of imbalance we are talking about. For want of appropriate technology and skills, for example, we retain barely 20% of the true value of our extractive mineral resources, oil, gold, and all the other minerals, barely 20%. And this imbalance, President Akufo-Addo is telling the United Nations Assembly that Africa must have a bigger, respected voice in decision-making processes that directly impacts our lives and our progress. The future of Africa and Ghanaian youth rests largely on the success of advocacy for change in international economic relations. Now, friends of the media, the demand to sit at the table of peers and decision makers comes with responsibility and accountability. So far in world governance, multi-choice or multi-party democracy is the tested path to responsibility and accountability. A periodic, free and fair vote establishes a bond of predictability and certainty between the governor and the governed. Such a process empowers governors to fight for their people with credibility. That is why President Akufo-Addo is stressing the protection of democracy as an absolute necessity for prosperity, security, and stability. Ghana has experienced authoritarianism and military dictatorship in various forms, but the democratic Fourth Republic has lasted the longest. 29 years out of 64 years since independence. Governance practitioners maintain that it has been the period of most consistent growth. Yet, these 29 years have not been without major difficulties, especially the phenomenon of the winner of national elections taking on the entire power of the state, including local government, to the exclusion of all others. This has created a culture of fierce, no-holds-barred politicking, where parties are constantly agitating to get into power and incumbents cannot deliver long-term incremental development programs. The ongoing MMDCE appointment process highlights the need to expand voter choices to the lowest level. Then, every locality will have the right to choose its mayor, just like it chooses its member of parliament and president. Apart from the onerous burden on the president to find and appoint MMDCEs, there is also the question of tensions at operational level, as voters prefer to pass their development claims and local needs through MPs who they voted for. The MPs who are voted for then struggle to influence development choices and facilitate individual needs through the non-partisan assemblies. A very tall order indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, the NPP believes the amendment of Article 55(3) to allow for multi-party contest for MMDCEs and assembly member positions will break the syndrome of winner takes all once and for all, and thereby stabilize the practice of liberal multi-choice democracy in Ghana. Every party would have a stake in the progress of the country at any point in time through local resource control and policy ownership. It would seem that there is no more debate about electing MMDCs. What is at stake is whether to elect them on multi-party basis. The MPP is clear about elections on a multi-party platform. Under the heading Governance on page 164 of the 2020 MPP manifesto, we have said we will, and I'm quoting, work to build consensus towards amendment of Articles 55(3) and 243 of the Constitution and any other consequential laws to allow for the direct popular election of MMDCs on a partisan basis and to devolve more powers to local authorities, unquote. This clear statement of intent was in progress with the planned referendum of 2019. Unfortunately, it had to be aborted after the NDC split on the issue. The NDC national leadership refused to play ball, whilst its parliamentary caucus had been working closely with the MPP to amend Articles 243 and hold a referendum on 55(3). Ladies and gentlemen, fortunately, the consensus building process seems to be picking up pace, with some CSOs working very hard towards that object. The newspaper articles of a gentleman whose name I'll mention, Enoch Randy Akins, of the Institute of Democratic Governance, IDEC, published in the Daily Graphic of September 4th and 11th, 2021, are very instructive. Other public education material on the matter is available. The NPP will continue to engage in order to deliver the best possible outcomes for governance in order to ensure a credible place for Ghana in the Committee of Nations as we fight for prosperity, security, and stability. In conclusion, I want to congratulate all the nominees of the President for MMDCE. I urge all assembly members to engage the nominees and establish lines of mutual agreement towards formal approval before the approval dates. Since the assembly elections are supposed to be non-partisan, 100% approvals are in order and very possible. Since the assemblies are supposed to be non-partisan, 100% approvals are in order and very possible. This appearance of unity within the assemblies will facilitate the assembly members' own service to the people who elected them. Thank you very much for your attention.